Well, welcome to the lesson on plural nouns. Now, we've learned earlier that nouns are a person, place, thing, or an idea. Nouns can be singular or they can be plural. At your house, you may have one television or you may have more than one television. If you had two or three televisions, then you would say televisions, or you would spell televisions. So it's important that we know how to make nouns plural, and there's different ways that can be done. The most common way to turn a singular noun into a plural noun is to simply add an S. Most of the time you're going to do that, not all of the time, but most of the time. We'll take a look at a couple of examples right now. Alright, many of you have a cell phone that you use all the time, probably too often actually. But if you had more than one cell phone, let's say you had two cell phones, then how do we make that plural? Well, this is an example of where we simply add an S. Another item that many of you have at home is a laptop. Again, if you had more than one laptop, let's say you had two laptops, how would we make that plural? Again, this is another example where we simply add an S to make laptops. So phone becomes phones, laptop becomes laptops, just by adding an S. Real simple, huh? Now, there are instances where to turn a singular noun into a plural noun, we cannot just simply add an S to the end of that noun. You might have to add an ES. Let's take a look at a couple of examples where we add ES to turn a noun into its plural form. Many of you play soccer, and if you do, from time to time you may compete in a tournament. A lot of times in a tournament you play several soccer matches, not just one, but several soccer matches. So how do we turn soccer match into its plural form of matches? Well, that's easy. In this case, instead of adding an S, we add an ES, matches. If you like Mr. Conley and wear a watch, just so you know what time it is, then that's another noun that we may have to turn into its plural form. And if you had more than one watch, say you had 5 watches, then how do we turn watch into its plural form? Well, this is another example where in order to do that, we add ES. Typically, singular nouns that end in S, we also have to add ES in order to make them plural. Right? It wouldn't make much sense if we added an S to bus to try to make that plural. Wouldn't look right, and how would you pronounce that? But by adding ES, instead of one bus, there's a whole bunch of buses out in front of Marshall Simons. And last example, class. For middle school you have several classes. You have English class, you have math class, you have a social studies class, and a science class. So all these classes keep you very busy during the day learning important stuff. So how do we say classes or turn class into its plural form? Well, this is another example of where we use ES in order to turn a singular noun that ends in S into its plural form. Sometimes a singular noun ends in a Y. How do we turn those nouns into their plural form? Let's take a look at an example. An example of a singular noun that ends in Y is family. And if we were to turn this word into its plural form, how would we do that? Well, in this case, we don't just add an S, and we don't add ES either. In this case, what we do is we drop the Y, and then we add IES. And then that creates the plural form of family. Families. However, sometimes a singular noun that ends in Y, we do just add an S to turn it into its plural form. An example of that would be valleys. In this case, we don't drop the Y and add IES to put valley into its plural form. We just simply add S. Valleys. How do you know which ones to drop the Y and which ones not to? Well, that's where reading comes in handy. The more you read, the more you kind of see which ones need IES and which ones just need an S to be put into their plural form. We also have that plural rap song that we've sung in class. And they're singular nouns that end in O. Some of them you just add S, and others you have to add ES. Let's take a look at those next. Sometimes a singular noun may end with the letter O. How do we turn those words into their plural form? Well, there's one of two things that we do. We either simply add an S or we add ES. Let's take a look at an example. Echo is a singular noun, right? It's a thing, and that ends with O. To put echo into its plural form is one where we just add s. In fact, most singular nouns that end in o, all you do is add an s at the end to make it plural. Very simple. There are 8 singular nouns that end in o that to put them in their plural form we have to add es to the end of those singular nouns. Volcano, mosquito, potato. If you go back to that plural rap song that we learned earlier in the year, that'll list out the 8 singular nouns that end in o that you need to add es to. Volcano is one of them, so here we just add es, and now volcano becomes volcanoes in its plural form. Again, this is one of those things where the more you read and the more you kind of memorize and remember these things, the better you'll be at spelling these particular nouns and putting them into their plural form the right way. So hopefully that helps. Right? Singular nouns, again, are a person, a place, or thing, or an idea. Plural nouns would just be 2 or more of those same people, places, or things. And we either simply add an s, an es, or an ies to turn some of those singular nouns into their plural forms. Hopefully you've learned a lot, and if you have any questions, just see me in class.